The league season in non-league has now finished. We're on to the playoffs. Last game of the season was on Saturday, and there was plenty of excitement up at the top and bottom of tables of the National League, National League North and National League South. We're going to look at it all in this video. So first of all, this video is sponsored by OneFootball, who've been great this season, helping me stay up to date with loads of different scores and information such as league tables, upcoming fixtures, stats, all sorts of different things. And yeah, they've just been really helpful with that app to stay up to date. If you want to download it, the link to download it will be in the top line of the description. But anyway, starting off in the National League, and prior to the weekend, at the top of the table, Leyton Orient were at the top on 88 points, and behind them were Salford and Solihull Moors, both on 85 points. So Leyton Orient knew that they needed just 1 point to ensure that they won the league. And incredibly, out of all three of these teams, none of them won, which is crazy for the last game of the season. But what it meant was that Leyton Orient, despite drawing 0-0 at home to Braintree Town, who were second bottom of the league, in front of a packed out the Bray Group Stadium, they would get promoted back to the Football League after just 2 seasons in non-league. So that's great for them as a football club, massive football club for non-league, so it's good to see them getting promoted back up into the Football League. As for the two teams, Salford went away to Hartlepool United and lost 3-2, and Solihull Moors drew 1-1 with Dagenham and Redbridge. Playoffs, as we mentioned in the last video I did prior to the weekend, those positions are all secured, and down at the bottom as well in the National League, all the teams that were going to get relegated had been confirmed for a number of weeks. Into the National League North, and similarly to the National League, the title battle went right down to the last day. Stockport County began the day 1 point ahead of Chorley, and they knew that it was in their hands. They travelled away to the Nuneaton Borough. They pretty much invaded the entirety of the Nuneaton ground, and it was the first ever sellout of Liberty Way, which is a crazy achievement for Nuneaton, but 3,500 of the 4,000 people in the ground were Stockport fans. So essentially, Stockport are totally responsible for that sellout, and I'm sure there would have been more fans that would have got in if they had tried, probably some in the Nuneaton end as well. And Stockport ended up winning this game 3-0 to trigger absolute jubilation at the end of the game. Pitch invasion, as you would expect. And this signalled the end of Stockport's stay in the National League North since the start of the 13-14 season. They've been at this level for 6 years, which for a club of that size is pretty terrible for their fans, so it's good to see them getting back up to the National League. And of course, with Stockport getting promoted, that meant that Chorley had to miss out on that automatic promotion. They've been really good rivals for Stockport this season in that title battle, kept it nice and entertaining. It's been changing hands all season, and Chorley unfortunately now go into the playoffs. They won their last game of the season. They beat Bradford Park Avenue 3-2 at home, but Bradford, they're actually not too dissatisfied, because that result actually, along with Telford's away loss at York, meant that Bradford Park Avenue actually stayed in the playoffs despite losing the game. And incredibly, this result meant that if Bradford had actually conceded another 2 goals and lost this game 5-2 instead of 3-2, they would have dropped out of the playoffs. Crazy situation. Despite losing, they've actually managed to stay inside the playoffs just because of goal difference. So both Telford and Bradford lost on the final day of the season. It was between them two. They were level on points at the start of the day. One of them had to go into the playoffs. It was only between those two and Blythe Spartans. Blythe Spartans, they had actually won their game 2-1 against Southport, which meant that they stayed in the playoffs in that 6th position. So that 7th position was up for grabs, and that was just between Bradford and Telford. Telford's goal difference was +9, and Bradford's was +10. Bradford has scored more goals, so they have the advantage in terms of goals scored. So if they conceded with 2 more goals, they would have dropped out. But overall, they've actually managed to scrape into the playoffs just. Down at the bottom of the National League North, all the relegation places similar to the National League had already been confirmed. Ashton United, FC United Manchester and Nuneaton Borough had already been relegated down to the 7th tier prior to Saturday. Into the National League South, and this is the only of the 3 leagues that actually had a title battle already sealed well before the final day. As I mentioned in the previous video before the weekend, Torquay had already won the league. The playoffs, however, was a lot more open than in the other 2 leagues. Potentially teams as low as 11th placed Slough Town could actually get into the playoffs. But something quite interesting happened before Saturday. Just a couple of days before, Concord Rangers were actually disqualified from the playoffs. I'm going to do a video looking into this more in detail in the future. Let me know if you would want that video in the comment section down below. But Concord were disqualified despite actually qualifying for the playoffs. They were disqualified because they didn't have enough covered seating in the ground, which means they haven't got the ground grading regulations, despite them assuring the National League that they would actually have them in place ahead of the new season. They've been kicked out of the playoffs, and unlike last season, where there were a couple of teams that kicked out of the playoffs, and teams from lower down in the table were moved up to basically fulfill the playoffs, Chelmsford City have actually just been given a bye into the semi-finals of the playoffs. So that means that no one from lower down is going to reach into the playoffs without actually finishing inside those playoff positions. So, onto the actual battle for the teams from below trying to get into the playoffs on the final day. There was only one space up for grabs, that was 7th position. And the team that managed to climb into those playoffs were Wealdstone. They won 2-1 against Hemel Hempstead, and that saw them overtake Billericay, who lost at home to Bath City, and also St Albans, who lost at home 4-0 to Torquay. So Wealdstone overtook a couple of teams to climb into the playoffs right at the end of the season. Looking down to the bottom of the table, and there were 3 points separating 20th place Truro City with 19th placed Hungerford Town prior to Saturday. And with Truro having a better goal difference than Hungerford, Truro knew that if they won their game and Hungerford lost theirs, then Truro would stay up. However, both teams ended up drawing. Truro drew 3-3 against Slough Town, and Hungerford drew 1-1 against East Thurrock. So that condemns Truro to a relegation down to the 7th tier alongside East Thurrock and Western-super-Mare. So that's it for the roundup of these 3 leagues following the final day. Are your teams progressing into the playoffs? Let me know in the comment section down below, because you guys, you've got extra games to look forward to. And how do you think your team's going to do in the playoffs? Let me know in the comment section down below. Did your team get promoted, relegated? Also, let me know in the comment section down below. Also, stay tuned for a video coming up very soon where I'll round up all the action going on below the 6th tier. So in the 7th and 8th tier, I'll round that up. And thank you guys for 15,000 subscribers. We tried to get to 15,000 by the end of the season, and incredibly, we actually reached it with 18 minutes to spare. Yes, at 11:42 p.m. on Saturday the 27th of April, we actually got to 15,000 subscribers. So cut it very fine, but thank you guys so much for helping me get to that milestone. It's absolutely awesome. And yeah, I'm looking forward to carrying on videos throughout the summer ahead of next season. So if you're new idea, remember to click the subscribe button down below as well. And yeah, I hope to see you next video, and thanks for watching.